And welcome to part 8 of Celebrian Dramatic Reading. I am JD, the reader. Fear me and the story. Actually, fear the story more because this is sexual content. This is squick, and it's not really an enjoyable read, but I do hope it's an enjoyable listen. So let's get started. Children under 18 not allowed. Get out. Anyway, here we go. Last we left, she was stroking the giant chicken. With each stroke, she took him deeper into throat. Pigeon English at its best. She noted coolly that her throat was used to the king, even without the draught. She did not choke or gag. She began to pick up speed. Without realizing it, her hands moved to the king's Nerf balls and felt the familiar weight and warmth of their mass. She now dove with eager, wet slurps on the glands at the beginning of each stroke. When the cock quivered with impending explosion, she pulled it from her throat so that she could catch his gush in open mouth. For a moment she stared at the smooth glands, stared into the hole that promised to come. Then the king erupted. The flood was greater than any before it. It immediately filled her mouth to overflowing. It splashed up her face into her nostrils. Gross. It poured down her chin and slid in thick, gooey mass under her gown and between her breasts. The cock continued to spasm, sending more bursts into her open mouth. She swallowed as fast as she could, but could not hope to keep up with the flow. When the cock started to go limp, she worked it hard with her hands. Then she stood, lifting her gown above her waist, and presented her anus to the king. She guided his great chicken to rest against her sunken orifice. She wiggled backwards to force it in, but she need not have bothered. The king stood and forced it in himself. How kind of him. There was no pain. The dildos had prepared her well for the cock's girth. She felt only warmth and pleasure in her pussy-cat, while the chicken probed into her innermost reaches. Unlike her pussy-cat, no cervix barred the way. With some assisting thrusts of her own, she helped the king to seat his rod to its full depth in her body. Impaled on his rod, it felt like his cock reached her lungs. That can't be healthy. The king began to pump his cock into her depths. She rocked in concert with his thrust. Oh no! Now I'm imagining this, concert band doing this. This isn't right. Image, get out of head. As he came to climax a second time, she mewed loudly with pleasure. Meow! He plunged deep into her with the final spurt of his load and left her impaled on his dick, unable to bend with the stiff rod in her gut. That can't be healthy. She realized she had closed her eyes for most of the ass-fuck. She opened them and took in the gaze of the jeering crowd of the king's orcs. Bent over, hair falling around her face, cum from her blow-job still dripping from her face, her gown heavy and wet with jizz caught in its folds. Impaled on a 12-inch cock, fixed into her ass, she could not help but smile in triumph. She had accepted the challenge and survived on her own battle. She was a warrior of sort, and her actions had aided a fellow elf. Of course, the cock felt exquisite in her ass, too. Then she saw Ithelond. Okay, I can't do that very many times. He was tied and gagged, but he was positioned to the side so that he could see everything. I got dizzy from that, wow. And the horrible shock in his eyes told her he had seen everything. Well, how could he fucking not see it? It's like right in front of him. Then she shrieked and fainted. Nice transition. When she awoke, she was still in the stinking gown, crusty in places, but still mostly damp. She could still taste the king's semen in her mouth, and knew that her face and hair were still coated. She raised herself to a sitting position. She was back in the cell. Ithelon sat against the wall, staring at her, staring in disgust. I join him in staring in disgust at the story. Ithelon, I did it to spare you, she cried. Liar, pants on fire. Wait, she doesn't got any pants. Never mind. He shook his head. She tried to explain about the draughts, told him how much she had loathed what she had done to save him. Finally he replied, You took him willingly. You enjoyed it, I saw. How could you? Why didn't you resist? She burst into tears and hung her head in her arms. When the orcs came later with food, water, and cloths to wash with, they also returned her ass dildo. Oh, that's nice. She did not resist as they removed her gown and restored the dildo to her ass. They left it with the laces untied. Ithelon watched the entire process with undisguised disgust. When they left, she began to clean herself. It took a long time, but it gave her something to focus on. She did not remove the dildo. She could feel Ithelon's eyes burning into the back of her head. She could sense his disgust like a dark cloud in the room. She was alternately torn between self-pity and self-loathing. She had given so much for nothing. When the orcs came again, she let them lead her away quietly. Shh, gotta be quiet. Might wake up the little orc babies. She paid little attention to the orc wands as she passed by them, though the orcs were particularly raucous about the dildo straps hanging from her bottom. What? Why would you be excited about that? Seriously. At the king's throne she meekly fell to her knees before him and waited for his command. An orc female sat in his lap. She was naked. She was naked. Her hairy red twat was at Celebrian's eye level. She could see that weights had been fixed to her labia so they hung half a foot. What the hell? That's like not even right. My god, that's like mutant. I mean, I know it's an orc, but still there's physical properties to a human body that just cannot... Okay. I will continue. The she-orc's breasts were as big as the great king's head. You see, that's just not physically possible. You just can't... You'd fall over. Oh my god. Oh, let's just continue with this. Celebrian could have wrapped her hand around a teat and still not covered its full length. I'm back from my mental breakdown there for a second. I apologize. Let's continue. "Give the elf bitch her draught," he said. She wondered why the draught was necessary. She would do whatever the king commanded. She no longer had the will to resist. When the orc brought the wineskin, she took it from him and drank it. She looked for oblivion in its powerful warmth. You're not going to find oblivion in there. You have to go down to the local GameStop and get it for the Xbox. Sorry. I'm trying everything to keep sane. With the draught within her, Celebrian sang her slut names. She sang them? What, like, I am a cum drinker, I am a dick sucker, and worked her magic on the king, even lapping his semen from the floor this time. She took the king's cock in her mouth, pussy and anus coming to climate each time with a little assistance from her fingers on her clit. When the king seemed spent, she stood in front of him, proud of her service and the great wash of stickiness covering her body. But the king, though obviously pleasured, had turned his attention back to the orc bitch with the great breasts. He fondled her great teats and toyed with the quivering mass of her breasts. Celebrian found herself growing jealous of an orc bitch. "Take my breasts, my king, they are firmer and sweeter than that hag's," Celebrian said. "Silence, cocksucker, your feeble tits are not worthy of my attention." He continued to fondle the female. Celebrian watched with longing and frustration, and you really don't want big boobs. Seriously, they're a pain. The king eventually turned his attention back to Celebrian. "If it weren't for those sad paps, you would be the best little elf bitch." She nodded in agreement, still in the heat of the draught. "But that can be fixed." "Can it?" she asked eagerly. "You can make my body perfect with great breasts to match your wonderful cock. Is it possible, my lord, oh great ass-filler?" The king whispered into the she-orc's ear. She went away down a tunnel and returned with 2 leathery bags. Celebrian so that... Grammar. Periods. Commas. Something, please. Here's the sentence. Celebrian so that they were full of some liquid and had some sort of spout at their bottom. That is not a sentence. As the orc bitch grew close, Celebrian released that the sacks were made... Oh, it's supposed to be realized, but it says released. Celebrian released that the sacks were made from the great breast skin of some immense orc female. She did not care. It was the liquid she wanted. If it could give her breasts, that would capture her king. The elf bitch dribbled the contents of the sacks through the teat hole onto Celebrian's breasts. "Rub it in," said the king. Celebrian rubbed the milky liquid into her skin, while the orc bitch continued to dribble it out. It seemed that her pores sucked it up. It took an hour before the contents were soaked into her breasts. Already the absorbed moisture had swollen her breasts to twice their normal size. They were hard and tender, and still far smaller than the great orc's paps on the female before her. And we're going to stop there. Join us next time for more torture.